So let's get down to business and answer the question first. It's probably on most of your minds. Yes, I am in the movie. I'm played by this guy, Patrick Maple. If you haven't heard of him, it's okay. Most Americans haven't either. And he doesn't say very much in the film. He sort of loafs around, watches television, hangs out a bit. But you'll be disappointed to know this is not actually what I did in college. And you probably won't be all that surprised to note the Facebook story doesn't completely match up with what Aaron Sorkin imagined. Contrary to what the producers thought, our dorm room at Harvard didn't look like a luxury apartment. There was no sex in the bathrooms, at least that I'm aware of. And while there was a little bit of alcohol, the idea of sort of this alcohol-fueled hackathon wasn't exactly the reality. So you may be wondering, what does the social network actually get right? And for everything that it does get wrong, what is at the core of the Facebook story in Aaron Sorkin's imagining of it is also at the core of the Facebook story in reality. Facebook, I would say, is the defining example of American entrepreneurship and ingenuity in the 21st century. But it doesn't just have to be American. We live in a world with fewer boundaries than ever before. From your desk or even your pocket, you can access the vast amount of information and knowledge that human history has produced. And from the same location, you can create, whether it's a website or an app, a service or a tool that millions of people can immediately use. But at the same time as we have all this power and all this potential, we can't be fooled by the fact that there are lower boundaries. It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone can create something new and become a millionaire tomorrow. In fact, there are a few key ingredients that made Facebook possible, that drive the work that I now do at the New Republic, and I think are worthwhile to keep in mind for anyone, whether you're an up-and-coming entrepreneur or just a business owner who's trying to figure out how to use social media more effectively. First off, diversity. Everybody likes to think that Facebook was just the imaginings of a room full of coders and engineers. In reality, this wasn't the case. Mark Zuckerberg had an engineering background, but he was actually double majoring in psychology and computer science. Dustin Moskovitz, one of our other roommates and one of the other co-founders of Facebook, had taken one class, Introductory to Computer Science, before he proceeded to code the vast majority of the initial site. And people like myself were actually studying things like history and literature, things that, while I don't use that knowledge per se in my everyday life today, certainly shaped my worldview and introduced a whole new set of questions into those late-night conversations held in our dorm room of Kirkland House, room H33. This diversity strengthened us. It meant that we all didn't approach the same problem with the same set of criteria or the same way of thinking about things. It meant that each one of us had a different perspective and a sense of curiosity and a commitment to thinking out of the box. We also didn't get it all right just off the bat. This is one thing that the movie also gets right. Facebook wasn't the first project that came out of our dorm room that year. In fact, there were a series of other ones, and those ones didn't turn into the next Facebook. One ripped up the Harvard photo ID system and turned it into a Hot or Not application. Probably not the most mature idea in the world, but one that we were able to code up pretty fast. Another pulled together a study guide for class. Instead of just going through and spending hours and hours to create a study guide based on a compilation of notes, instead we created a tool that enabled anyone in a class to submit their notes, to submit images, and to create a study guide that people could use immediately. That one had some success, but wasn't necessarily a runaway success like Facebook initially was. And even once we did create Facebook, the site as we launched it then would look nothing like it looks today. There was no wall or any kind of interactivity. There was no messaging on the platform. You weren't able to have anything but a single profile photo. In many ways, it was just a static profile, but the key was that you could share information in a protected local environment and connect to friends who were representing who they actually were, their real identities, rather than creating a new one on the web. The point is, we didn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And we didn't wait months and months or even years to build a product, to ship it, and to see if it worked. We had to start somewhere. And that culture of experimentation was at the core of Facebook's initial success and how it continues to expand today. The final ingredient that I would say that was behind Facebook's rise was perseverance. The success of Facebook wasn't just about having a big idea at the right moment in time. I feel like a lot of times we look back on these big inventions and we mythologize them to think, wow, if I could have just had that one idea at that moment in time, everything would have been different. In reality, we all have great ideas all the time, but it's the perseverance and diligence that's required, and that has taken nearly 10 years to build the world's foremost leading social network with over 1 billion active users. The hard part comes in the day-to-day work to build out the network, to keep it vibrant and responsive, and to make the hard business decisions that have led Facebook to where it is today. It's this perseverance that I would say is at the core of our story and the story of any successful entrepreneur in the 20th century. Now, today, I run a very different kind of organization. We have a 99-year-old media brand called The New Republic that we're endeavoring to reinvent for the 21st century. In a time when newspapers and magazines are under significant stress, economically in particular, in the United States, what we're trying to do is combine the newest technologies, new ways of gathering information, surfacing narratives, and interacting and having interactive conversations around them, and combine that with the high-quality journalism that has shaped our political and cultural conversation for nearly a century. We don't have a silver bullet. We don't have a magic solution to all the problems of the media. But what we do share is many of the same characteristics and values that Facebook was founded upon. We have a diverse group of minds, people who speak dozens of languages, some who specialize in opera, other in television, and still others in the machinations of power in our political system in the United States. We also have a culture of experimentation. We know that not everything that we do is going to work. And in fact, we cultivate a sense of reflecting at any given moment on what is the 20% of activity that we're doing, whether it's something on our website or the type of articles that we're printing in our magazine, that just isn't cutting it. And if we're honest about that, we can choose to defund or change course and instead invest in new ideas for the future. And finally, we have a determination to persevere and succeed. We're not going to be able to turn around an institution that has existed for nearly 100 years overnight. It takes time to both learn what works and what doesn't work, but also to understand what customers and readers in the marketplace in 2013 want and need. Whatever your company is or your dream is, it's up to you and to all of us to invent the future. Entrepreneurs like you don't take the world as it is, and that's what is so special about being in our position today. It's up to us to make the world as it should be. Thank you for having me here today.